Under what circumstances can a person legally have two husbands? I looked at the two sleeping husbands beside me, my fingers twitching as I typed out my answer. When your younger husband time travels to the present. Then you can legally have two. The comments section was full of people laughing at me for daydreaming. My fingertip lightly grazed the nose of the husband on my right. At the exact same moment, both husbands raised a hand to rub their noses. Time travel is nothing. These two are psychically linked. I woke up from a hangover to find myself lying between two Williams. The William on my left had fair skin and a hint of boyishness. The William on my right had a solid six-pack and an air of mature confidence. The one thing they had in common was that they looked identical, like twins. I slapped myself, trying to wake up from this incredible dream. The sharp sting on my cheek made it all too clear. This was not a dream. I looked down at the love bites scattered across my body, and my heart pounded. Was I the filling in a human sandwich last night? Though I still hadn't figured out what was going on, I recognized the man sleeping on my right. That was my real husband, William. A sliver of light peeked through the curtains. William's eyelids fluttered, he was about to wake up. In a panic, I threw the blanket over the fake husband on my left. When William opened his eyes, my hand was clamped firmly over the fake one's mouth, half my body pressed on top of him as I pretended to be asleep. I must have looked incredibly strange. Luckily, William has a cool personality and doesn't like to press for details. Seeing that I was still asleep, William got up to get dressed. It looked like William had also had too much to drink last night and probably didn't notice the other person lying next to me. Just as I breathed a sigh of relief, I felt a warm, wet sensation in my palm. Is this guy a dog? I quietly ducked my head under the covers. The fake husband was squinting at me. I shot him a look, warning him not to make a sound. Suddenly, William's clear voice came from behind me. If you're awake, get up and have some breakfast. I quickly poked my head out, eagerly agreeing. I'll be right there after I get dressed. William left the room without a second glance. For 3 years, no matter how many times we'd been intimate, William was always a little distant the next morning. My chest felt tight. The fake husband took the opportunity to slip out from under the covers and hug me. My sadness vanished instantly. I'd almost forgotten about him. I pushed him away forcefully. Who are you? Why do you look exactly like William? The fake husband smirked and leaned in closer. You're William's wife, so of course, you're my wife, too. It suddenly dawned on me. I smacked him on the back. You're William's twin brother, aren't you? So last night, these two brothers are completely insane. Rage shot through me, and I stood up, ready to storm out and confront William. The fake husband tightened his grip, pulling me back into his arms. You really jump to conclusions, don't you? Clear out the junk in your head for a second. To put it simply, I'm the 20-year-old version of William. 20-year-old William. Time travel? I froze on the spot. Until 30-year-old William knocked on the bedroom door. Breakfast is ready. The knock startled me, and I grabbed the blanket to cover the guy next to me. 20-year-old William caught the blanket and pulled me into his arms. We're not exactly secret lovers. What's there to hide? He's William, and I'm William. I thought about it, and he kind of had a point. What's the difference? William is William. So I calmly sat on the edge of the bed and started getting dressed. The younger William spoke from behind me with a laugh in his voice. You're accepting this pretty quickly. Don't tell me you've always wanted two husbands. I flinched and immediately shot back, of course not. Am I that kind of person? Even I wasn't convinced by my own words. Wipe the drool off your face first, then maybe I'll believe you. Just as he finished speaking, the real William, who had been waiting outside, pushed the door open. Oh, crap. Breakfast is on the table. Eat it while it's hot. I'm heading to work. After giving his instructions, William closed the door and left. What was that about? Could he not see the younger William next to me? If he could see me, do you think you would have slept peacefully until morning? The younger William behind me composed himself. To keep you from mixing us up, you can call me Leo from now on. Leo followed me to the dining table, and I peppered him with questions. He answered each one patiently. It turns out that before Leo time traveled, he was sleeping in his college dorm. He fell asleep, and suddenly, there were two other people in the bed. At that moment, the real William and I were lost in our own world. Leo told me he blushed as he watched, only to realize that the two people were his older self and me, his wife. Furthermore, Leo discovered that his older self couldn't see him, but I could. Wait, how did you know for sure I could see you? I struggled to swallow a bite of my fried egg. Leo's ears turned red as he explained softly, "Well, you were. You know. You kept asking why there were two husbands. Then you kicked my abs with your foot." What? Bits of egg shot out of my nose. I was choking and could barely breathe, but I still managed to force out a few words to change the subject. "Let's just talk about how to get you back to your own time." The atmosphere froze. Leo raised an eyebrow and stared at me. "What are you going to do, cosplay as Doraemon and pull a time machine out of your pocket?" Heh. Leo, you're so sarcastic you could poison yourself just by licking your own lips. After that, we silently finished the single serving of breakfast on the table. Leo cleared the plates and took them to the kitchen to wash. Why is my 30-year-old self so broody? I looked at Leo and shook my head gently. I'm not sure. In the 3 years we've been married, William's always been like this. What does he do for work now? He's a forensic pathologist. Leo frowned. How did our family ever agree to let me do that? Our family? I hesitated before speaking. William's parents passed away 9 years ago. Leo froze, staring at me, his eyes like those of an abandoned child. William only mentioned it to me once, before we got married. I don't know how they died. After we got married, William and I never talked about it. I knew it was a painful subject, so I never asked. Leo stood there for a long time, tears streaming down his face. I couldn't help but walk over and gently wrap my arms around him. Suddenly, I realized that in Leo's timeline, his parents' death hadn't happened yet. There's still time. If we can find out what happened back then, you can prevent it when you go back. Leo buried his head in my shoulder, his voice muffled. You're right. There's still time. My phone vibrated twice in my pocket. I lit up the screen. It was a message from William. Have you finished breakfast? It was followed by an emoji. William rarely sent me emojis, unless he was feeling really down. My head cleared instantly. I pushed Leo away and unlocked my phone to reply to William. Leo didn't seem annoyed. He just waited quietly for me to finish texting. When I'm sad, he gets sad, too. Wanna know why, wifey? I nodded eagerly. Because we share our senses. Everything I feel, he feels, too. So that's how it was. Of course, I can feel everything he feels, too. So last night, I slapped my hand over Leo's mouth. That's a detail we'll keep behind the paywall. The moment William walked in the door after work, I rushed over to take the groceries from his hands. Welcome home, honey. You must be exhausted. Let's cook dinner together tonight. William instinctively tried to refuse. I'll cook. You just go watch your shows and wait for me. I wasn't giving up. I followed him into the kitchen. Seeing my determination, he relented and pointed to the vegetables he'd just bought. All right, you can wash the vegetables over there. With that, William put on an apron and started prepping the other ingredients. I actually learned how to cook. Leo's voice suddenly whispered behind me, making me jump. I stole a glance at William and saw he was focused on marinating the meat, not looking my way. Leo smiled and took the vegetables from my hands, starting to wash them carefully. What are you afraid of? He can't see me. The second Leo's hand touched the water, William looked at his own hands in confusion. I immediately realized what was happening and quickly turned off the faucet. Only then did William shake his hands and go back to the meat. Almost forgot. We share our senses. Leo stepped back, his gaze fixed on me. Remembering my mission, I gathered my courage and asked William, "Honey, I was wondering, what happened to your family back then?" William's hands stopped. He turned and stared at me, his eyes filled with a grief so profound it was as if my words had dragged him back into a painful memory. Beside me, tears started rolling down Leo's cheeks. I panicked. I didn't mean to bring it up. I'm so sorry. The kitchen was dead silent. It was a long time before William spoke. During winter break of my sophomore year, our house was burglarized. It was right before the holidays. I couldn't get a train ticket, so I had to take a bus and got home a day late. When I got there, the house was a wreck. There were police officers investigating the scene. They asked me to identify my parents' bodies. William's voice was calm, as if he were talking about something that had happened to someone else. I knew this was a sign of emotional detachment after immense trauma. "William, I'm hungry," I said, trying to pull him back to the present. William quickly snapped out of it. "I know. You can go wait outside. Dinner will be ready soon." Leo followed me out of the kitchen. Before I time traveled, I had just finished my sophomore fall semester finals. I quietly interrupted him. A home invasion is usually about money. Why would they kill someone? Besides, when you were in college, digital payments were already common. Did your parents keep a lot of cash at home? Leo picked up where I left off. No, they kept their money in the bank. They'd only have a few hundred in cash at home for emergencies. And my parents weren't misers. If they were in danger, their first instinct would have been to give up the money to save themselves. There had to be more to the story of his parents' murder. But William was in a fragile state, and I didn't dare press him further. After William finished cooking, he didn't eat. He went straight into his study. Leo and I sat at the table. Just as Leo was about to pick up his chopsticks, I stopped him. "If you eat, William will feel it." Leo looked utterly wronged. "I'm only 20. I'm still a growing boy. He's 30 and can handle being hungry, but I can't." As if on cue, Leo's stomach rumbled. I had no choice but to steel myself and knock on the study door. "Honey, are you coming out to eat?" There was no answer. Suddenly, I felt a warm breath on the back of my neck. Leo wrapped his arms around me tightly from behind, his eyes red. At the same time, William's heavy voice came from the study. If I had just bought that train ticket, would my parents still be alive? That night, the two of us, no, the three of us, went to bed hungry. Since William and I don't have many friends, we didn't bother with a guest room when we renovated the house. Looking at Leo's slightly swollen eyes, I felt a pang of sympathy. I just couldn't bring myself to tell him to sleep on the sofa. I scooted closer to William, making just enough room for Leo to lie down. Leo on my left, William on my right. And me in the middle. It was a complicated feeling. I didn't sleep well that night. When William pulled me into his arms, Leo pressed up against my back. Their bodies were both so warm, I was sandwiched between them, too hot to sleep. In a hazy state, I instinctively shifted away from the heat. A certain firmness pressed against the small of my back. "Don't move." Leo's voice was low and husky. I was instantly wide awake. 30-year-old William might be able to control himself, but 20-year-old William can't. Just go to sleep. Hearing that, I opened my eyes and studied William. His eyes were closed, his breathing even. I squinted and let my gaze drift lower. So William was also, what a contrast. I didn't dare move again, staying in that position until morning. William rarely checks his phone at work, and I didn't want to bother him. So Leo and I decided to go directly to his old house to see what we could find. When I bought the train tickets, I subconsciously bought two. But I forgot I was logged into William's account. An hour before the train departed, William sent me a screenshot. William, going to City A? Me, yeah. It took him 20 minutes to reply. Be safe. I clutched my phone, trying to read his emotions from those 2 short words. Unfortunately, I wasn't very good at that. I turned off my phone. By now, Leo had opened the closet and was about to pack some clothes for me. When I turned to look, his hand was just touching my lace nightgown. I blushed and stopped him. Not that one. But it was too late. Leo held it up by its thin straps, his ears bright red as he looked at me. You too, are things usually this exciting? I snatched the embarrassing garment from him and tossed it on the bed. Let's go. We're going to miss the train. We hastily packed our bags and left. Luckily, Leo and I had seats together. His ears were still red, but his expression was grim. What's wrong? Leo mumbled, William is angry. I immediately started to panic. I pulled out my phone and texted William. Honey, what are you doing? William replied quickly. Work. Did something happen at work to make him angry? I was about to ask more, but Leo raised his hand to stop me. He's jealous. I froze. William, jealous? In 3 years of marriage, William had never once been jealous. And what did I do today to make him jealous? Leo held his fingertips in front of my face. Just now, he touched your nightgown. William went home? Crap. The truth is, I've never worn that nightgown in front of William. And now it was just lying there on the bed. William must have gotten the wrong idea. I quickly texted him, Honey, I was in such a rush this morning, I forgot to put my nightgown away. If you see it when you get home, can you put it away for me? William didn't reply. My message went into a void. I suddenly felt a wave of regret. My clumsy explanation sounded like I was protesting too much. But the train was already moving. There was no way I could go back and explain things to William now. I spent the entire trip to City A fidgeting anxiously. A message from William finally popped up. We need to talk when I get home. Through the screen, I could almost see William's icy glare. I looked at Leo. He looked broken and helpless. What's wrong with William? Leo shook his head. I can't quite put my finger on it. I just feel this heavy, suffocating feeling in my chest. Whatever. We'll deal with it when we get back. I followed Leo to his old house. Or rather, William's old house. The apartment complex was old. Through the window, we could see the apartment was empty. Most of the furniture was covered with sheets. I knocked on the neighbor's door. The neighbor was a kind-looking old woman. From her, I learned more about William's family. The motive for the crime was indeed a home invasion. But the identity of one of the perpetrators was completely unexpected. One of the intruders was William's own uncle. His mother's brother. How could that be? Leo's question hung in the air, but only I could hear it. And no one could answer. On the way back, Leo kept muttering, my uncle was always so good to our family. How could it be him? I reached out and took Leo's hand. Whatever the reason, you know who the killer is now. You can avoid it when you go back. Leo finally snapped back to reality and nodded firmly. But a new problem arose. How were we going to get Leo back? I rubbed my stomach. I'm starving. Do you know any good places to eat around here? Leo took me to a little hole-in-the-wall place. When I was in high school, my parents and I used to eat here all the time. I thought for a moment, then took out my phone, snapped a picture, and sent it to William. The food at this place is so good. William didn't reply for a while. I put my phone down and focused on enjoying the food. A few moments later, I noticed Leo clutching his chest, slightly hunched over. What's wrong? Are you okay? I patted his back while asking what was happening. What did you just send William? I pulled out my phone and showed him. Leo clicked on the picture and studied it with difficulty. Then, he pointed at the image. You included my set of dishes and chopsticks in the picture. William's jealous again. And it's bad this time. What? I pulled Leo up and we rushed to board the next train back. On the way, I couldn't help but ask Leo why he was so prone to jealousy. Leo looked me straight in the eye. Imagine if one day, William secretly booked 2 train tickets without telling you. You rush home from work only to find his underwear tossed on the bed. Then, when he gets to his destination, he sends you a picture to check in, but you see 2 sets of unwrapped utensils in the photo. What would you think? Oh. Crap. I'm so screwed. From my perspective, I was investigating a cold case to help 20-year-old William avoid a tragedy. But from William's perspective, this looked exactly like the prelude to me cheating on him. When I get back, how am I supposed to explain a 20-year-old version of him? William can't even see his other self. Leo was amused by my crestfallen expression. You forgot. We're psychically linked. So? Leo suddenly leaned close to my ear. You and I could, and let him feel it. Then he'd have to believe you, wouldn't he? Hey, that's right. Wait. No, that's not right. I balled up my fist and gave Leo a light punch. I could just punch you a few times. That would prove to William that you're real and that you two are linked, right? Leo winced but still laughed. You saw right through me. Looking at Leo's bright, sunny smile, my heart suddenly ached for William. How much had this cheerful person endured to become the somber man he was today? I returned home, my heart pounding with anxiety. The house was empty. I texted William to ask where he was, but he didn't reply. My only way to gauge William's mood was through what Leo was feeling. How are you feeling? Leo sat silently on the sofa, clutching a piece of paper. He left you a note. I snatched the note from him. It was written in William's neat, sharp handwriting. The pressure of the pen had almost torn through the paper. Daisy, I'm going on a business trip for 3 days. I'm giving you and him some time. I hope you've made a decision by the time I get back. Don't bring him back to our home again. Below the last sentence, there were faint smudges, like dried tears. William, had he been crying? I had really messed up. I sent William a novel's worth of texts, trying to explain my strange behavior over the past few days. But as darkness fell, William still hadn't replied. I curled up on the sofa, clutching my phone, my fingers trembling as I called him. A cold, robotic voice answered. The number you have dialed has been switched off. Leo stood beside me for a long time. The dinner on the table, which William had prepared before he left, had been reheated several times. Tears welled up from deep inside me. Sour, frustrated, and full of regret. If only I had told William everything from the beginning. Even if it sounded crazy, at least things wouldn't have ended up like this. The sofa cushion beside me sank. Leo held out a bowl of food to me. I turned my head away, refusing to eat. Eat your dinner. I'll teach you how to win William back. You're not him. My words seemed to strike a nerve with Leo. I am him. Even after 10 years, I'm still me. How are we any different? I didn't answer. It felt like I had ruined everything. I couldn't hold back the tears any longer. They streamed down my face. Suddenly, a shadow fell over me. Leo leaned down and kissed my tears away, pulling me into his arms. Don't cry. When you cry, I feel it. And when I feel it, William feels it, too. I gradually stopped crying and took the bowl from Leo, wolfing down the food. A few minutes later, I was choking and pounding my chest, but I didn't forget to ask, how do I win him back? I'm done eating, tell me. Leo pointed to his own neck. A red rash was spreading across his skin, a clear sign of an allergic reaction to alcohol. William is drinking his sorrows away. I shot up, clumsily pulling on my shoes and rushing for the door. Leo grabbed my arm. There are so many bars. Do you know which one he's at? Don't rush. As he spoke, I finally noticed the weakness in his voice. Are you in a lot of pain? Leo shook his head slowly. Let me feel it a bit more. I should be able to get you some clues from the environment. A few minutes later, Leo asked me if there was a bar by the sea nearby. He could smell the faint, salty scent of the ocean. A place immediately came to mind. I grabbed Leo and we rushed out the door. I drove fast, and 20 minutes later, I pulled up to the seaside bar. Leo was slumped in the passenger seat, his face contorted in pain. William must be in agony, too. You wait in the car. I'll be right back as soon as I find him. The car door slammed shut. I think Leo said something to me as I left. But I was too focused on finding William to hear it. The seaside bar was a quiet lounge. William was sitting alone at the counter, his posture straight and tall. The dim lighting only made him look more solitary. I thought of Leo's pained expression. William must be feeling just as awful right now. But he wasn't showing it at all. I walked over and sat down next to him. Honey, can we go home? William turned his head to look at me. We stared at each other for a long moment, the air thick with tension. William pulled at the corner of his mouth. Made your choice? I shook my head. There was never anyone between us. The corner of William's mouth stretched into a wide, wild grin. It was the first time I had ever seen him lose control of his emotions. Daisy, is this fun for you? Who did you go to City A with? Who were you planning on wearing that nightgown for? Before I could answer, William raised his hand and covered my mouth. Daisy, choose me. Please. William's voice trembled, a smile still on his lips, but his eyes were filled with tears. In that moment, I suddenly understood the problem in our 3-year marriage. He was used to giving silently, never voicing his emotions. And I was the same. When I sensed a problem, I just hoped time would fix it, rarely initiating a real conversation with him. I leaned in and hugged him. William, I have only ever loved you. In 3 years of marriage, I haven't understood you well enough. When you're hurting, you hide away, and I've gotten used to letting you be alone. That's going to change. I'll never leave you to face things alone again. William slowly raised his arms and hugged me back. The sound of the ocean waves was a gentle rhythm, washing over my heart. Before we got in the car, William held my arm, stumbling forward. The moment I pulled open the passenger door, Leo's limp body slumped out. I rushed forward to catch him. Leo! Wake up! William, standing beside me, rubbed his eyes in disbelief. Honey, is there someone in the passenger seat? I settled Leo back in his seat, then pushed William into the back. Your alcohol allergy is serious. We're going to the hospital right now. I sped to the hospital and got William checked into the ER. After William was hooked up to N4, I turned to go back to the car to check on Leo. But William called out from behind me. Honey, don't go. I feel awful. I rubbed my throbbing temples, thought for a second, and stayed where I was. William was on a drip now, so Leo's symptoms should ease up soon. The car windows and doors were open. He should be fine. The whole time traveling, psychically linked thing was too bizarre to explain in a few sentences. I sat by William's side and, on a whim, took his phone out of his pocket and turned it on. William, I texted you my explanation. You can read it yourself. 10 minutes later, William leaned his head sleepily on my shoulder. Honey, are you saying that the 20-year-old me time traveled to the present? I nodded. When did he get here? William's question brought back a certain memory. A wave of heat crept up my face. The night before last. I kept my answer as short as possible, hoping William wouldn't remember what we were doing the night before last. William hummed lightly, then squeezed my hand. Isn't that the night we were trying to make a baby? So he was just watching? Don't say it out loud. William didn't lower his voice. The hospital corridor wasn't empty, even late at night. A few people on 4 drips turned their heads to look at us, seemingly eager for the next part of the story. I covered William's hand with mine. I felt a warm, wet sensation on my palm. This guy, why does he love licking my palms so much? Honey, I still don't get what shared senses means. William's voice was slurred, but I understood him. I leaned close to his ear and whispered, "It means that everything you feel, he can feel, too." William's eyes went blank. He processed this for a moment, then suddenly pushed my hand away. So he could feel it that night, too? Daisy. I'm jealous. I quickly raised my hand to cover his mouth, but all eyes in the corridor were already on us. Haha. Is it too late to switch hospitals? After the last of the 4 fluid was gone, William was completely sober. He had returned to his usual cool, reserved self. I felt a pang of sadness. It was like we were back to how things used to be. We walked side by side to the car. Suddenly, William spoke. Honey, focus on driving. Don't look at the passenger seat. With that, he opened the back door and got in. This time, William really was different. I nodded eagerly, opened my door, and slid into the driver's seat. When my peripheral vision swept over the passenger seat, I froze. It was empty. Leo was gone. Clinging to a sliver of hope, I reached out and patted the passenger seat. I felt nothing. Leo had really disappeared. Seeing my dazed expression, William leaned forward and asked, "What's wrong?" I unbuckled my seatbelt, explaining, "Leo's gone. I have to find him." William got out of the car with me, and we searched the entire area around the hospital. Nothing. I wanted to check the security cameras, but then I opened my phone and saw my chat history with William. I scrolled up to the picture I took at the restaurant with Leo. There was just food and 2 sets of utensils. My phone couldn't capture Leo, so the security cameras probably couldn't either. I crouched on the ground, trying desperately to figure out where Leo could have gone. He rarely went out, and I'd never told him our address. What do I do? William crouched down on the ground with me. He's important to you, isn't he? I answered without thinking. Of course, he's important. He's the younger you. But in this world, besides me, no one else could see or touch him. It was morning by the time we got home. I looked around our home in a daze. The messy cushions on the sofa, the crooked chair at the dining table, the leftover dishes. And that note. William carried me into the bedroom. Don't be sad. Maybe you'll sleep, and he'll reappear. After being up all night, my eyelids were heavy. I fell asleep almost as soon as I hit the bed. When I woke up, I instinctively said, "Leo, time to get up." No one answered. I reached out to the left side of the bed. It was cold. The room was dark, amplifying my sadness. William opened the bedroom door. Light spilled into the room. I threw myself at William, checking him all over. William bent down and kissed me. His cool lips pulled me out of my grief. He didn't let me go until our breaths were completely intertwined. As long as you remember him, he'll always exist. He is me, honey. If you miss him, just look at me. We're the same person. William's words completely soothed my sorrow. The aroma of food drifted into the bedroom. Honey, let's go eat. William smiled and tapped my nose. There's just one last dish, your favorite sweet and sour pork with pineapple. You go ahead and start, I'll bring it out as soon as it's done. Looking at the table laden with food and William bustling in the kitchen, I was filled with an unprecedented sense of happiness. Silly, I told you not to wait for me. William brought out the pork, his eyes full of adoration. Suddenly, I saw a red mark erupt on his arm. The plate crashed to the floor. William clutched his arm, the veins on his forearm bulging. I rushed over to check his injury. A few minutes later, William murmured, "It's okay, honey. It doesn't hurt anymore." But the scar on his arm remained. The next moment, William's phone and our doorbell rang at the same time. I picked up William's phone. It was a video call. And the caller ID read, "Mom." I held the phone screen up to William's face. He just stared at it, dumbfounded. I got up to open the door, and a kind-faced couple stood on our doorstep. They were carrying bags of fruit and snacks. All our favorites. In an instant, I understood what had happened. Leo had returned to his own time and successfully prevented the tragedy. "Daisy, what are you doing just standing there? Here, take these. Mom and Dad bought them for you." "Where's William?" I took the bags and turned around. William was standing behind me, his eyes red, not daring to take a step forward. I patted his shoulder, telling him this wasn't a dream. "Dad, Mom, I've missed you so much." William hugged his parents tightly, unwilling to let go. His parents beamed. "You're a grown man, still so clingy. Be careful, Daisy will laugh at you." That day, William took his parents and me all over the city. It was late spring in City C. The trees were lush, and everything was a vibrant green. The day passed quickly. William ended up telling his parents everything that had happened. His parents were quiet for a long time before his dad finally spoke. "No wonder you came rushing home that year right after your break started. You wouldn't tell us anything, just that Mom and I needed to leave quickly. We had just stepped out the door when the burglars broke in." I sat beside them, listening quietly. His parents said that because William had come home and was prepared, they weren't hurt. Only William got a nasty scrape on his arm from a rock. William and his parents talked for a long time, late into the night. I couldn't stay awake and went to bed first. The next morning, William and his parents went out to buy breakfast. I stayed home, looking at the changes around our house. The study was filled with William's paintings. Some were of me, some were landscapes. The brushwork was delicate, the colors vivid. It was wonderful. This is how Leo grew up. The bright, passionate paintings matched his personality perfectly. The warm, happy day passed quickly. William's parents lived in the same complex as us. They went home after dinner, reminding William to spend more time with me. That night, William pulled me into the bathroom with him. "Honey, it's late. Let's just shower together." I wasn't quite used to this new William yet. I was about to shake my head no, but he had already taken off his shirt. His abs were sharply defined, the V-lines of his hips disappearing into places unknown. I was stunned. "How did your body change, too?" William turned around, showing me his lean back. It seemed like my wife didn't want to shower with me. "You can go ahead and get out then, I'll wash up first." As he spoke, he turned on the shower. Water streamed down his skin. "Honey, of course I want to shower with you." "I do, I really do." After our shower, William held me as he sat on the edge of the bed, drying my hair. In the shower, he had teased me several times, seemingly by accident. Now, I didn't know if it was from the hot water or my own body heat, but I was dizzy, my hands roaming over his body. William caught my restless hands, his voice deep. "Not so fast. Let's get your hair dry first." I swallowed hard, my eyes still glued to his waist. The towel was blocking the best view. I shifted restlessly and sat on his lap. "My hair will dry naturally after some exercise." That night, the moonlight ebbed and flowed, and the shadows of the trees outside swayed up and down, making my head spin. At the height of our passion, William kissed my face over and over. I felt a slightly rough touch on my ankle. William was kneeling at the foot of the bed, gently massaging my foot. "That's weird. Why are there two husbands again?" I kicked my foot forward, trying to see if I was hallucinating. My toes hit something solid. A muffled grunt came from the foot of the bed. "Still have the energy to kick me? Looks like you're not satisfied yet." Leo slowly crawled up beside me, taking my fingers and guiding them to his face. His voice was hoarse. Honey, want to try the 20-year-old William? I nodded dumbly. I do. 30-year-old William instantly sensed something and swept me up into his arms. Don't even think about it. Then, he swung a punch at the empty air. Don't you have your own wife? Go find the 20-year-old Daisy. She's at C University, environmental design major. If you really care, you'll be able to find out which class she's in. Seeing that I had gone quiet, William finally relaxed. In my peripheral vision, Leo quietly moved to the other side. He raised a finger to his lips, shushing me. I got the message. I pretended he was gone and hugged William, feigning sleep. A short while later, William stirred. I knew their psychic link was still active. William pulled me into his arms. So, who's better? 20-year-old me, or 30-year-old me? My eyes were unfocused. I looked weakly at William and managed to answer. You're the best, honey. The heat behind me pressed in deeper. The force of it made me gasp. It's a tie. William was so annoyed he laughed. Then tonight, you'd better pay close attention so you can give me a definitive answer in the morning. It was a sleepless night. End of main story. Leo's extra. I woke up and saw my future self and my future wife. From my wife, I learned about my parents' accident. So I followed her to our old house in City A to look for clues. The whole way, the sour feeling in William's heart filled my own chest. I looked at Daisy beside me. A secret thrill sparked within me. I was jealous, but I was jealous of myself. So weird. The day William went to drink his sorrows away, I felt awful, too. Before Daisy got out of the car, I asked her to come back soon. But her mind was completely on William. She didn't hear me. She chose William. I was both sad and happy. It seemed like her eyes were always only for William. Soon, I passed out in the car. When I woke up, I was back in my college dorm. The train tickets were sold out. I took a taxi back to City A overnight. Finally, I prevented the tragedy from happening. My parents survived. We moved away from City A, and my mom cut off all contact with my uncle. I heard he'd gotten into gambling. When my mom refused to lend him money, he turned malicious. After getting my parents settled, I started looking for Daisy. But Daisy had never told me anything about herself. I couldn't find her. Lying in my dorm bed, I kept praying to the universe to let me see Daisy one more time. This time, I wanted to meet her sooner. I opened my eyes, and Daisy was lying contentedly in William's arms. Seeing me again, she reacted just like the first time. So cute. I snuck up behind Daisy and whispered in her ear. If you want to try, take my hand. I waited for a long time. I waited until William was asleep before Daisy gently slipped her hand into mine. William, when you go back, find me sooner. I love you. I will. William woke up again. I almost forgot we were psychically linked. This time, it was finally 30-year-old William's turn to be jealous.